So for the next section, we're going to create 3 cards kind of at once. We're going to create a background, and then we're going to do some lift ink to stamp on the other 2 to create those cards. We're also going to create 2 other backgrounds, one for this flower and one for this flower. Those ones we're going to die cut, so they don't need to be perfect backgrounds, but let's create those. So in this video, we are going to do those 3 backgrounds. I have it's actually a hair tool that is low voltage, and it's got 2 speeds, and it's also got a cool setting to it that I'm going to use to blow the inks around. You could also use an alcohol ink blower. This just works a little bit quicker. So for the first background, I'm going to mist my paper. So this bottle just has 99% isopropyl alcohol in it. I've also got a dropper bottle with that, and I'm just going to use one color. It's the crimson. We're going to create a background just with the crimson. And I love this color because it's just a nice, beautiful, rich red. And then start moving it around. And for this one, I want the whole background covered. It doesn't need to be all evenly one color, and it always looks best when it's got more than one shade of the same color to it. And if you haven't worked with alcohol inks before, they do dry fairly quickly. And I've got some ridges here where the alcohol ink won't go past. So what I'm going to do is put some isopropyl in those open spots, add some ink. So I do the isopropyl first, add some of the ink color, and then more isopropyl, and that helps it move around. And then we'll fill in those areas. And if by chance you want to rehydrate the whole piece with ink, that's what this spray bottle is for. It's good for getting ink off the whole or over the whole surface, but it's also good for rehydrating your whole background. If by chance you don't love it, it also adds some textures to some of those areas that just get a little bit of mist, which in turn makes it look a little bit more interesting. Oh, I must have sucked up some of the crimson with the bottle dropper because I got a little bit in there. All right, I just don't want these big white patches here. I'm trying to eliminate those. There we go. I don't normally put it on the high setting, but I just wanted to make sure to get that ink in some of those areas before it dried. You want to make sure you're using a surface that you don't mind getting stained with alcohol ink. If you use a lighter matte, chances are the alcohol ink is going to stain it. All right. So I'm going to set this aside to dry. And I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to leave that stuff at the bottom there. I will clean it up once I'm done my backgrounds, but that liquid underneath there is going to help hold this piece of paper or piece of Yupo in place. And I'm using Yupo paper, which is not a paper, it's a synthetic, it's a plastic paper, but it's a perfect surface for using for alcohol inks because they stay on the surface. So this is one of the ones I'm going to die cut. The first one is the one that we are going to use the lift ink and stamp off of. So I've got the same crimson, and I'm also using Pinata Brass. I'm not a huge gold person, but I love this one because it's got, it's not too yellow, and it flows really nicely. So I put some of that pinata in each of those spots, and then I'm adding some isopropyl to spread it around. And since this is one of the ones that we are die cutting, it's just to get the color over the whole surface, and I want areas big enough to die cut my poinsettias. So I'm just going to do it once. Now the reason I didn't use Pinata Brass for the first one is because we're using alcohol lift ink, and the lift ink doesn't lift metallic. So you would still have metallic in some areas that you were lifting your image from. Sometimes that's okay. For this one, I just didn't want to have that in there. And then once you've got your ink that's not flowing anymore, once it's pretty much set in a certain area, then you can set it aside to completely dry. And you want to make sure it is completely dry before you die cut. You will get some alcohol ink that transfers to your dye anyways, but you can just clean it off with isopropyl alcohol. So that will get set to the side. And then this one. So this one here, I want lighter colors because I want to have some lighter areas, because it's going to be a die cut that we're going to put on the red, and I don't want red on red. So these aren't perfect colors, but they will work for what we are doing. I just want to lighten it up a little bit. So a good amount of that isopropyl. This one is salmon, and it is really diluted with isopropyl, and this one is a pink sherbet, and it is also really diluted. But you can see once we add a little bit of the crimson, it'll just lighten the whole thing up, and that way when we have our die cut flower on there, it's not going to get completely lost. I just want to make sure that the part that we're going to die cut is able to be seen from the background. I want it a little bit different. One thing I forgot to add, I've got some rainbow sparkles. This is from Marabou. Just to add a bit of glitter to it. There we go. Just to get a bit of a different texture. This is another one of the ones that we are going to die cut. And you can see how that is much lighter than this. Sorry, my hands are in front of it. Than this, so when we have the die cut flowers, they're going to show up beautifully on that surface. All right, those backgrounds are done. I am going to set them aside to completely dry before we move on. And I'm also going to completely clean my surface area before moving on as well. Just realized I forgot to say how to clean up your surface area. So I just take that same isopropyl in the spray bottle and I spray where the alcohol ink is. Make sure that your pieces are far away from it, otherwise you're going to get overspray on them. And then just a paper towel to wipe it up.